Yeah, thank you so much. So Dr. Halil Gemara. Yesterday we learned in our Mishnah four variations of cases and sales when the lekeach is nisana lekeach can back out of the deal, but not the moicher. When the moicher is nisana, the moicher can back out of the deal, but not the lekeach. Where the deal is neither satisfactory to either one. And the example of that was Levana v'nimsa shachmamis. If they decided that the transaction was going to be white wheat and it ended up being red wheat, they both could back out. And if it was exactly as per their discussion, then neither one could back out. So the Mishnah was speaking about a case where the pashtus is that it wasn't a change in value, it was a change in product. So if it was yafos for him to rise, that means instead of giving me $10 worth of yafos, he gave me $10 worth of rise. He didn't take advantage of me in the cost of the item. The Mishnah says that only the loikach could back out if it was yafos for him to rise, but not the moicher. Rabbi Chisda wants to take it for a stretch and say it even means if there was a difference in cost as well. And he wants to bring a raya from the Mishnah to that point. So let's see Rabbi Chisda again. So the Mishnah says, the Gemara says at the bottom of that base, Omar Chisda, which means the lakach was ripped off. In the confusion, as they're working things out, the item went up dramatically. So now the moicher has every incentive to want to cancel the sale because he would much rather sell it for a higher price. So at the actual time of the transaction, Minisana, who was the one who suffered from the Oino? Lakech. Because at that point, the Lakech paid 6 for something that he should have only paid 5. So therefore, it's only the Lakech Yochalach Saboy, Veloy Moicher. Why? Mishum the Amerle. Because Lakech can tell the Moicher, you want to back out. Had you not overcharged me, had you not wronged me, loy have a had you sold it to me for the correct price, you would have had no recourse. You couldn't have backed out. So hashta dainisan matzos hatrabach. You want to claim that now that you took advantage of me, you should get a prize? You should get a prize for charging me more than you should have. And because of that, you should be able to back out of the deal. If in fact the object went up even more, that's not logical at all. So that's Reb Chisda's logical taina. And then Reb Chisda brings a raya from our Mishnah to his halacha, because v'tana tuna yafos v'nimtzu rise lekech yochalach saboy v'loy moich. Now, there's a very big difference between the case of Reb Chisda and the case of the Mishnah. In the case of the Mishnah, the item didn't necessarily change in value. It's only in Reb Chisda's case where it changed in value. Now, what would be the argument? Why in the world would you justify that the moicher should be able to back out? Why should he be able to back out? The tiny Reb Chisda says is very posh. You should benefit from the fact that you overcharged me. So the Rashbam shares with us a very, very logical taina. Why the moicher who overcharged it first should still have the right to back out. And this is what the Rashbam says. The halacha is that how long does the person who was nis'ana, how long does he have a right to back out for? He has a right to back out for the time that it takes either to show it to a tagger, to show it to a merchant or his relative, to verify the actual value of the product that he bought, right? That's normally the rule. So the transaction is sort of in limbo until that occurs, because up until that point, he can claim, I know. So I'm in the Rashbam, 5 lines from the bottom in the center of the line. At the bottom of Pegimel and base. Or the Could Omer Bigamor Bazov. The Hukru Besoy. You know when it went up in value within that period of time where this transaction was not yet sealed in cement. The Hashta during this, let's call it grace period, the moicher turned out being nisana because in this period of time it went up to 8. And not only was he nisana, he was nisana even more than a 6th. There's the main understanding by Noah is if they know is exactly 1/6, the mekach is kaim, and the Noah is returned. The overcharge is returned. But if it's more than the 6th, you say it's bidul mekach, and this transaction has not yet been sealed because the time, the grace period for which the nisana could back out of the deal, which is b'chdei shiur l'tager l'koyvei, has not yet expired. But right, so moicher lachzor ata. Why does the moicher want to be choizer now? Mishum da'adayin lo niskayim ha'mekach legamri, because this mekach has not yet been completely sealed. Kozman sheyochel loikeach lachzor, as long as the loikeach is within his cooling off period. Da'adayin leher l'tager l'koyvei, he has not yet shown it to a merchant or to his relative to verify its value. Vibal during this period, now the moicher is also being nisaneh. Right to he wants to back out. Now, side lokech and side the moicher suffer they know. Nevertheless, Rav Chisda says that the moicher cannot back out. The mishu nisaneh meikara b'shas mechira. Who is the person who is nisaneh at the actual time that they made the deal? That was a loikeach. Hilchach loikeach yochel lachzaboy kol shor sheyirtza v'soich zman hakotzav loy. The loikeach within this entire cooling off period, the loikeach has a right to be choizer avol loy moicher. That is the chiddush of Rav Chisda. You would have thought that the moicher could be choizer because this deal has not yet been solidified. There's still a grace period here. So maybe it's still in flux. Maybe the moicher can still back out. Kamat Malon. You know why he can't? The only reason why there's a grace period here is because the moicher had originally taken advantage of the loikeach and the overcharge. The alpha pisha even though the mekach was not in this kaim yet, when he got nisana, he has no claim, no right to say that he's entitled to anything. Going on the Peidal Manalef, if you would not have taken advantage of me at the time of the sale, the mekach would have been this kaim, and you could not have been chayzer. Even though it went up afterwards. And now because you hurt me, you should be rewarded. Since I'm in a better position because you took advantage of me, and Chazal gave me the advantage now that it's up to me whether or not I want to back it or not, you should also benefit from that scenario. Of course not, because of Kain Matzinu Choitenisk. So that's not logical at all.
Wouldn't it just that it went up and it's none,
right?
And there was no the might of the
Say that again.
Yeah.
It did go up in that time. What do you mean?
Let's say the might did not overcharge.
Then nobody would be able to back out.
But the prices went up.
Right, so it's you sold it right before it went up. That happens every single time I sell a stock. Only if there was a no.
He doesn't even know. He doesn't know it doesn't market. The buyer doesn't know.
Right. So he has until then to check it out. But if it's right, but yes, true. But if it turned out that it was valued properly, then he does not have a right to that.
By the way, the kind of tuna that did go up.
I'm not done yet. Yeah, that's right. That is the case. Because the point is, how could Rav Chisda be bringing a riot from a Mishnah if Pashas the Mishnah is not speaking where it's going up? right? So now I'm up to the next Rashbam. Yafos v'nitzu rosh. I'm skipping two Rashbams. Yafos v'nitzu rosh, and the Rashbam says Harei nisan lekeach. That's a case. Our mission's a case with lekeach got nisana because he was looking for good and he bought bad. Lekeach yoch lachsaboy v'loy moicher zok Rashbam avagabdu. The mission doesn't say that it went up. If you read the Mishnah by itself, it doesn't say it went up. But now the Rashbam is saying, when Reb Chisda brought the Raya, Reb Chisda held that the Mishnah must also be speaking in the case where it went up. Why else would the Mishnah need to tell me that the Lekech could back out and not the Moicher? Obviously, even if it went up, right? The Mishnah says Lekech could back up and not the Moicher. Why in the world would the Moicher want to back out? He gave him inferior product. The teretz is, the Mishnah must be saying the Moicher would want to back out if it went up. So that's Reb Chisda's deal, is that the Mishnah, even though it doesn't say it went up, it must be speaking in a case where it went up as well, because if it didn't go up, why would the Mishnah tell you that the Lekech can be Chayzer and not the Moicher? Why in the world would the Moicher want to be Chayzer if it didn't go up? Okay, thank you for bringing that up. So Zok to Gemara Vayter. He says another halacha. The Amar Reb Chisda, Mocher Leishava Sheish Bechomes. So in this case, the Lekech was Aneh, the Moicher, or the Moicher was Nisaneh, the Hodl, and now the value dropped dramatically. The Amdu al Gimel, Nisaneh. In this case, who was Nisaneh? It was the Moicher, because he undercharged. So then, Moicher Yachalach Seboy V'loy Lekeach. Why? The Amar Lei, once again, if the Lekech decides that he wants to back out, the Moicher will tell the Lekeach, if you would have paid me a fair price at the time of the transaction, you would never have been able to be chayzer now that you can get it for so much cheaper. After that, you took advantage of me. You think you could be chayzer? Surely you cannot. For the same time as the response earlier, and we also have a right from our Mishnah, so again, the loy loikeach is the same diuk. It must be even if it went down, because if it didn't go down, why would the loikeach want to be chayzer?
Obviously, the Moicher is not going to want to be Chayzer.
Because now you can not sell for even less, right? It's bad enough that you're you bought it for 5, but now I would only be able to sell it for 3. Practically more, my kamash v'lon masnisim. The way we understood Reb Chisda's Raya, the Mishnah pretty much says exactly the same thing as Reb Chisda. So, why is Reb Chisda telling me his Torah? Isn't that exactly what the Mishnah is saying? Zok to Gemara, no. There's a very big difference. Imi masnisim. If we only had the Mishnah of Rois and Yofos, Havamina, I would have said, Dilma the Reb Chisda tarvayim otzi hadjim. Maybe in Reb Chisda's case, where I paid you more than I should have paid you, rather than just give you a different product. Maybe in the Mishnah's case, if it were only for the Mishnah's case, I would have thought that in Reb Chisda's case, where there was actually a difference in value, that they could both be chayzer. Umas nisim. Now the problem is the whole raya that the Mishnah was speaking, where it went down in value, is because it says lekeach could be chayzer and the moicher cannot. Umas nisim. Let's read the girsa that the Rashbam has. Imi masnisim havamina. The Reb Chisda tarvayu hadrubuhu. I would have thought in Reb Chisda's case, even the moicher can be chayzer. Umasnisin hainu taima mishum the ra yomer hakaina. It's because of ra yomer hakaina, and the Rashbam walks us very nicely through this scenario. Kloimar, the Reb Chisda, the ikaina tarvayu hadru. In Reb Chisda's case, where there was actually an undercharge. So we're focusing now on the first case. I'm sorry, where there's an overcharge. So we're going to focus on the first case of Reb Chisda, where the lekeach paid more for the product than he should have. However, in Nisana, they could both be chosher. I would have thought, if I only had the Mishnah, I would have thought that in Reb Chisda's case, even the moicher could be chosher. Why? However, Nisana hama'ana lebesayf. Since the Aneh, which is the moicher who overcharged, ended up also being nisaneh because it went up. but he was nisaneh b'soich zman shahoya hamisaneh yochol lachso. Again, repeating what the Rashbam said earlier, we're still within the grace period that the lokeach could have been choizer. Since within the grace period that the lokeach could have been choizer, the tables turned, and now it's the moicher who was the me'aneh has now become the misaneh. The predator is now the hunted. The kivon the loy niskayim mekach lagamri, since the mekach has not yet been fully completed, ad dinasaneh gam hame'aneh, until the tables turned, and now the maneh, the moicher is now the nisaneh because his product went up dramatically. Therefore, tavayu hadu. That's what I would have thought was pshat. Doesn't Reb Chisda have a raya from our Mishnah? Zok gemor umasnizin. But the Mishnah is not speaking in a case where the product was of a different cost than what they discussed. I charged the right price. I just gave you a different set of goods. And now the Lakayach is saying, I don't want the rise, I want the Yafos. In the case of the Mishnah, where I sold a different product, the Amrlay, he will say, Yafos bikashti, I was looking for Yafos. I was looking for apples and you sold me oranges. And therefore, umech tos. There's an argument that it's a mekach tos. If the moicher wants to say, you're right, I told you Yafos and it's really rise. It's not a good sale. Why does he want to say that? He wants to say that because it went up in value. But I agree with you. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. We made up Yafos, and this is rice. Let's delete the sale. The Lakech will say, no. It's not. It's exactly what I expected. It's exactly what I expected. So we're talking in the case where it went up. The Lakech wants to change his taina of mekach, right? He wants to maintain it because he's going to make a lot of money. So the Lakech said, no, I never meant mekach. It's not a tos at all. This is exactly what we discussed. I knew they were bad. The Rabbi Yemer Akaina. How does it work in every deal? The Moicha says, it's the best thing in the world. It's so good. Pay me $6. And look at it there. It's not so good. I'm going to pay you $5. In every negotiation, the Moicha is always building up how wonderful the product that he's selling is. And the Lekech always says, nah, it's not so good. So the Lekech says, I said it was bad anyway. In our negotiations, they even mentioned, nah, it's not so good. So you see, I knew I was going to be buying Roy's. So it's not a mekach tos. This is perfect. You delivered exactly what I expected. No mekach tos here at all. Or on the flip side, with Seif and Nami, Roy's v'nimtu yafis. There it was the moicher who got ripped off. There I'm moicher chayzer. Why? The Amar Teisi. I made a mistake. I was supposed to give you Roy's. I gave you yafis. But if the tables are turned and the Lekech wants to say, you know what, you're right. You were supposed to give me Roy's. You gave me yafis. There's a problem over here. But if the Lekech wants to say, I want to be chayzer. For instance, why would motivate the Lekech to do that? Is because Chutin dropped in value and he wants to nullify the deal. And the Lekech wants to tell you're right. You told me you were going to sell Yafai, you told me you were going to sell Roy's, and these are Yafais. You didn't give me what I was supposed to get. I was looking for Roy's, and you gave me Yafais. We have to back out. The Moich will say, no. These are in fact the Roy's that you're supposed to get. The Cheskas Roy's lekachtam. You're right. When we were negotiating, you were calling these Roy's. I was calling them Yafais. But come to think of it, you're right. You did get exactly what you asked for. So he could turn it around. The Chach Pirish Rabbeinu Zikni Milas Kavoida, I guess. So this is what the Rashbam is quoting from Rashi. The Rashbam wants to add a twist. The Hachi Mati Tainle. He could say more. Ani lohi tasich. I never fooled you. When I sold you these, and I claimed they were Yafais, the Becheskes Yafais Mechartim. I held that they were Yafais because the Toiv Yemar Meicher Shas Mechir. So the Lean Nira is focusing on the Meicher's perspective, not on the Lekech's perspective. What do you mean? I built it up. I said it was good. Even if it's nimtza rois, I said it was good. But if you want to compare this to a Chisda's case, you can't have that opposing taina claiming that it wasn't Oida. No one could really be 100% sure of the cost of the item until he looks at the market better. There, you can't say that the koine was saying, no, I like this. This is really exactly what we said, right? In the case of Yofois, the Nimtzu Rois, if the Moicha wants to back out, the Lekech can say, no, this is what I always wanted. I always said rah. But when it comes to price, you can't say that. You can't say, if the Moicha wants to back out and the Lekech doesn't when he was overcharged, the Lekech can say, no, I knew you were overcharging me. That can't be the case. On the product, he could have a time that I got exactly what I wanted. But nobody's going to want to purposefully pay more. The Havayadea, surely if Lekech would have known that the product was not worth what he's paying for it, he surely would not have bought it, only for its proper value. And maybe you could believe him to say it's not a mekachtos because I knew they were bad, so therefore you can't reverse the mekachami. I accepted them anyway. The kivon sheshavos adamim. It was still worth the same amount of money. It's just that it wasn't such good product. But when it's a question, the whole I know is only because of a wrong price, not a wrong product. The lekech couldn't possibly say it's not a mekachos because I knew you were overcharging me. Because no one's going to buy something knowing that it's being overcharged. So it's a long response. But the distinction between changing a product and changing a price is very, very simple. The Lekeach might be able to say, when you gave me this inferior wheat, I accepted it as it was. I was happy with it. So therefore, there's no mekachtos. But no one could say, well, when you sold it to me for more, I accepted it. That's not a legitimate time because no one accepts paying more for something than it's actually worth. So therefore, there's a big svara to make a distinction. In our Mishnah's case, maybe you would say that the nis'ana could be chayzer, but the ma'aneh cannot be chayzer. Because of this taina, the nis'ana could say, no, it's really good. But in a Chisda's case, you can't make such a time. So if it ends up before the moicher, before the deal is sealed, before the grace period of at kretesha, yirol l'tagar l'kroivoy, maybe if the value changes dramatically, maybe now we look at it from the opposite direction, and they can both be chayzer. That you wouldn't know from the Mishnah. That Reb Chisda have to tell us that you do that. Gewaltig. So now we do learn it from the Mishnah Halacha L'Maisa, but it's a chiddush that Reb Chisda has to extend. Zok the Gemara weiter. Now this was the only complicated part of the day. From here on, it's smooth sailing. It's not black and white from here on, but it is red and white. If he said, "I'm going to sell you red wheat," and it turned out being white wheat. Now, what does the lashon shachmoses come from? It comes from the lashon chama. Somehow, when it's in the sun reddens the wheat. Or are we just comparing it to the color? I don't think what I said is correct. I just think we're comparing it to the color of the sun. It's reddish wheat because it looks like the sun. I don't think it says anywhere that it's the exposure to the sun that did it. It's a different type of wheat that we're calling shachmamas. It looks like the sun because it's reddish rather than the typical white that wheat comes in.
After it's milled, is it the same? I mean, after it's ground up into flour, is there a difference?
Color? I'm not sure. I don't know. We're not even exposed to these types of things because even the flour that we buy is so highly processed, it's like snow white. So I don't know. I don't know. If we were talking about beans, I would say I don't know my beans, but I definitely don't know my grains. Okay, so Amar Papa, B'degatani Lavana, since it says white, Shema Mina, it must be Hai Shimsha Sim Kosihi. It must be that the sun is reddish. So let's have a quick look at the Rashbam. Where do you get from that? From point A to point B. Shema Mina, Shechamosis is aduma, it's red, v'lo yishchar, and not black. How do I know that? What Rashi and the Rashbam knows that I don't know is that there's only two different colors of wheat available on the market: leveinois, vadumois, either white or red. Umidikari lechada levana. Since the white is referred to as white, and the one that's not perfectly white, shachmosis is referred to as the reddish type. Shemami no shachmosis aduma. It must be aduma. Why? Because we do know what color the wheat is. The wheat has a reddish tinge, and if we're calling the reddish wheat shachmosis, it must be that the sun is reddish. So through this process of Talmudic logic, we're concluding that the sun must be red, because we know the wheat is red, and we know the other wheat that it's compared to is white, so the shachmosis must be the red one. And the red one is called shachmosis using the word chama, so it must be that the chama is red. This is a typical Talmudical logic equation. Okay, so Zog to Gemara, Shmamina, Hai Shumsha Sumkasi. It's a raya that the sun is red. I love these types of Gemaras because look at the sun, you'll see what color it is, right? The teretz is Torah is a bigger raya to Mitzias than Mitzias. Okay, Shmamina Hai Shumsha Sumkasi. Taidan, I'll bring you a raya. The Kasam got Tzafar Panya. Early in the morning when the sun is rising, it's very reddish, right? It's a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset. It's all beautiful red and colorful. So, why is it that all day long, if the sun is in fact red, so all day long when we look up to the sun, it should be red. If you wear rose-colored glasses, then it always is red. But why don't we always perceive it as red? No, and the Rashbam says, there's bright sunlight, you can't really look at it, and therefore we can't really analyze its color, but in fact it's red all along. The light of the day makes us not be able to see where it's a little darker and the sun isn't so bright. Then we can really look closely and see that it's really red. For a popular Farish Mishnah Senu, but he's coming to explain a Mishnah, Amai Mikri Shachmasis, why we're referring to this reddish wheat as sun wheat. It says regarding Nagoyim, Umareyu Amaik Mina'ar. The white nega seems to be deeper than the skin. And the Brisa continues and gives detail into what it means that it's deep Mina'ar. Kimarachama Amuka Minatzel. Just like the look of the sun, it looks deeper than the shade around it. Well, what color was the nega? There's no such thing as a red nega. The nega is white. So you see that the sun is in fact not red. Rather, the sun is in fact white. We're comparing it. When we say we're comparing it to lagabi one feature, but not lagabi its color. It looks deeper than the tail. But for loy kamarachama, but it's not exactly like the marachama. The ilu hasam lavan v'hacha edom. We're really saying that the sun rays are red. Based on when we asked the kasha, when we were assuming that the sun was white, right? We had a kasha that it's white, but lemaisa we all see with our own eyes. In the morning and in the afternoon, the sun is red. Right? If you're going to say the sun is red, then you have to understand why during the day it looks white. So the way the Gemara got around that is because we can't see so well because of the bright sun. But if you want to claim that the sun is white, well, then what are you going to do about the fact that it's red in the morning and evening? How do you explain that change in color? So in the morning, the sun rises in the east. So in the east is where Gan Eden is. And therefore, there's beautiful roses there, so the sun refracts through the Gan Eden, which gives it a reddish tint. And Bepanya, the Chalfa Pesach the Gehenim. The Gehenim is in the west. So the sun, as it's setting, it's going through Gehenim, and the Gehenim also tinges it with red. The Yikadam Ibcha, there are those who say the opposite, that in the morning, when the sun rises in the east, it shoots its rays all the way across the horizon and reflects back the red of the Gehenim. And in the afternoon, when the sun is in the west, its rays shoot all the way across the horizon to the east, and therefore picks up the reflection of red. I don't understand exactly how this works. Okay. Usually by Vasikin, we're too busy davening. We don't even know what color the sun is, right? Oh, beautiful. Could be the sun in the Victoria Lake is red. Oh, gewaldig. So we said yain and chaymitz must be considered by our Mishnah as two different products, Because if chaymitz is just bad yain, then it falls under the category of yafayt v'nim to rois, where only the loikeach can be chayzer. But if it's shneim yochel lachser, it must be we consider yain and chaymitz as two equal but different products. That would indicate that our Mishnah holds like Rebbe and not like the Rabbanon, because it's Rebbe who holds there are two products, and it's the Rabbanon who hold it's a rune product. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa. Yain v'chaymitz min echad. Yain and chaymitz is one min. If it's one min, that means chaymitz is the rois version of yain. Lamai nafkamina. The nafkamina is if it's min echaru. Zok the Rashbam. The nafkamina is if you had barrels of wine and barrels of chaymitz, and you retire the chaymitz on the wine, so you're giving inferior product, it will still be a good truma. And the Rashbam says it's also negay inyan haydami minatayna. By moedim miktas, if I say you owe me $100 in apples, and you say I owe you $50 in oranges, that's not moedim miktas. It's only moedim miktas if you're a moedim to half of what I asked you. So with yain and chaymitz, there would still be a chiyuv of a shvur from moedim miktas, and if it's a case of truma, it would be chal on it. So Rabbi says shnei meaning. There are two different meaning, and therefore, if you try to take truma from chaymitz and yain, or vice versa, it wouldn't work. It would be like taking truma from apples on oranges. Let's say even though the Rabbanon, when it comes to truma, considers yain and chaymitz one and the same, like Abimekach or Memkar, they're not perceived as the same product. Only like Meiser and Truma, the Rabbanon say that if you return from chaymitz and yain, it will be a good truma, and that's because there's a gzeres hakosu. How do you know that if you use bad produce to patter up good produce, that even though it's not a good thing to do, but it's chal? Shenemar, it says in the pasuk regarding being tayrim, you shouldn't get an avera if you're tayrim min hara. It means the kaddish. If what you do doesn't work, nisi is chet lama. If what you do simply doesn't work, so you physically cannot ever be tayrim min hara. So here the Torah is saying is if you do it, it will work, but it's an avera. Mikan the tayrim min hara yafa shetrumas trum. But maybe that's only a gzeres hakosuv l'gabi the halach of truma. Avalin mekach memkar. It doesn't matter what they're technically considered. It matters how people perceive it. Mekach memkar is always the understanding of people. So maybe the Rabbanon would agree here. The chula alma ika denichale b'chamra v'lo nichale b'chala v'ika denichale b'chala v'lo nichale b'chamra. Some people want a vinegary taste, and that's what the product that they're looking for lechatchila. And some people are looking for a wine taste. So therefore, we look at them as both good products, but not the right product. That's two different products. Okay. What happens if you sell a pile of pears to your friend? Moshach v'loy modat. So the Rashbam says it's speaking, of course, where we had agreed on the price. Because if we didn't agree on the price, no matter what type of kinyanim are made, clearly no one's agreeing to anything because I don't know what I'm getting into. So it's obviously a case where either we made up what the price would be per bushel, per pound, per whatever. Now we just have to see how much you owe me based on how much you actually took, but the price is established. Or it could be that there's already a shar, there's a going rate for everything, so there's no reason to discuss the price. It's obvious that you know the price. So the loch is, even if you didn't measure yet, you're still kind of, because the price was established. Now it's just a matter to see how much was in it. It's like when you buy cold cuts, they cut it for you. You know what you're paying per pound, but you don't know yet how many pounds it is until they actually weigh it. But you're coin it before. But modad v'lo mosha. But if they measured how much was there, but you never made a kinyan, like it won't be coin. The Rashbam injects some very important information. Why? It has to be that you were measuring it in the kalim of the moicher, and it was placed in no man's land. But if you put it into the lakeach's kalim and you put it down into the simta, lakeach will be koina because his kalim will be koina for him, as long as it's placed like a simta where you have a right to place your kalim there. Okay. What if the buyer wanted to make sure he's going to get his product and he doesn't want the moicher to be able to change his mind? Then he would be able to, if they happen to be standing in the reshus of the bailam, he would be able to tell the bailam, I want to rent the space that it's in. This way he'll be kind it right away. But this only works. You can only be soicher mekaimai from the moicher if you're in the moicher's property. If you're just a rabbim, you can't rent space from anybody. What if you buy pishtan from your friend? You're not koina. The Rashbam says very clearly this means kinyan hagbah. You have to lift it up and carry it. For kinyan hagbah, you don't have to carry it. You just have to lift it up. But the derech olam is when you load it up on yourself and you make the hagbah, you're going home with it. So that's why the Mishnah refers to it as what if he bought a bundle of tuah or an amount of tuah that happened to be mechuber at the time, the tolish kolshu, and he was tolish a kolshu of it, kana, we'll have to wait to the Gemara to get clarity in what that means. If the moicher was modad it into the moicher's own payers, and he puts it into the simta to give it to the lakach kana, and that's a very big chiddush. Where is the kinyan over there? Where is the kinyan coming from? So zokt the Rashbam, if I could find it. Modad b'kilav shel moicher v'nichal gavishim dekana halakeach. How does that work? Ki'ilu anicha moicher b'shus shel lakeach. It's as if the moicher put it in the rishus shel lakeach. We're going to pasuk hadam. So obviously speaking, where the price was established. The simta, what is the simta? Is the amr that it's a shvil sheyichidim. It's a private path. V'nishimati, it's a kanisa by letters mishus rabim. The yesh rishus l'bnei adam l'hamicham chaveitz b'sholem. So since people are allowed to put it over there, it's okay. The einay also l'hilich b'nei rishus rabim. So we need to understand how this kinyan works. I'm putting it into my own kalim as the moicher. I'm putting it into a simta. How in the world are you being kind? Right? That's going to be the discussion today. Amalei Reb Zera Rabasi. Reb Zera told Rabasi, are you sure that's what you heard? Shema loy shama Rebbe. Maybe you didn't hear that from Rabbi Yochanan. Maybe what Rabbi Yochanan said was, are you sure Rabbi Yochanan wasn't referring to when you put it into the lakeach kalim? That would make more sense. So Rabbi Asi took offense to Rabbi Zera doubting his halacha that he said from Rabbi Yochanan. And Amalei said, Dami haimei Rabbanon, this Rabbanon is a dummy. No, that's not what it means. You're acting Rabbi Zera k'deloi gamri inshi shmaitza, like you never learned Aleph base before. Modad l'soich kupasai. Remember, boy, you think Rabbi Yochanan needs to tell us that if the moicher puts it into the lakeach's kalim, into a simta, that lakeach was kind of, that's Aleph base. Clearly, if Rabbi Yochanan was telling us halacha, he was telling us a mechudesh dik halacha. And it's a very big chiddush that even though it's still in the kalim of the moicher, if he puts it in the simta, giving it to the lakeach, that will work. It's a massive chiddush. We don't even know yet how it works, but that's what he wants to say. Zok Gemara, kiblu minei or lo kiblu minei? Did Reb Zera accept the criticism, or does Reb Zera still maintain, no, it doesn't work. It only works if it's in the kalim of the lakeach. Tashma, let's see if we can bring a right. If we're in the chatzar shutfim, the people could buy things from each other in the chatzar shutfim. My love, al gabe karka. It's mashma that it's al gabe karka, meaning if I'm selling you a product and this property belongs to both of us, if I just take the product and put it on the floor, giving it to you, that will be a good kinyan. So that is a raya to Rab Asi's version that it works without it. So wouldn't that be? And if Rabbi Yanai said it in the name of Rebbe, and we know that Rabbi Yanai was the Rebbe of Rab Zera, it must be that Rab Zera would have accepted. that means you didn't. Means if the moicher puts the pears into the keli of the lekeach, we're not done putting it on the floor. And hachinami mistaver. I'll prove it to you that it must be that you're only kind if the moicher puts it into the kelim of the lekeach. Rabbi Yaakov also was a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan, and he also said something over in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. And what was that? Modad v'niach al gavi simta loikon. So now Koshin Adodi. We have Rabbi Yaakov quoting Rabbi Yochanan as saying Modad v'niach al gavi simta is not kind, and you have Rabbi Asi quoting Rabbi Yochanan to say Modad v'niach al gavi simta is kind. Did Rabbi Yochanan say two contradictory things? No, it's a matter of explaining what Rabbi Yochanan meant. Elav Shamino. When Rabbi Yochanan was talking to Rabbi Asi and said, "You're yes, you're if the moicher put it into the kelim of the lekeach." When Rabbi Yaakov said over the name of Rabbi Yochanan that in the simta giving it to the lekeach is not koine, is kan b'moedid al gabe karka. So Shema Mina, you have a right from here. In fact, that Rabbi Zeir was not makabel from Rabbi Asi, and it's only koine if you put it into the kelim of the lekeach. Tashma. Now let's bring a riot from our Mishnah. Modad v'loy moshach. In our case, if you measured, but you weren't moshach, loy kana, it wouldn't be a kinyan. So what is our Mishnah talking about? My lav v'simta. Our Mishnah must be referring to a story that occurred in the simta. And even though we measured, I'm not kinda. Measuring would be putting it into the kelim of the moicher. As the Rashbam says, Modad v'loy moshach loy kana, ubal korchach b'modad v'niach al gabe karkamari. What must be the case? He measured it in his own kelim, the moicher's kelim, and then he put the product on the floor in front of the lekeach in the simta. The ibisach kupasoi, if you want to learn pshat in our Mishnah, is by moshach, by modad v'li moshach, is that you put it into the keli of the lekeach, then kasha l'kulu. Then it's fair on everybody, because the Mishnah says modad v'li moshach loy kama. Everybody holds in the kelim is kodim. So Elamai must be speaking where you put it on the floor, and that's why it's loy kama. So therefore, the Kasha Rabbi Asi Levada, Yitzchak Rabbi Asi, who quoted Rabbi Yochanan as saying that if you merely put it on the floor in front of the lekeach in a simta, that it would be kind of. So Zok Gemara Loi B'Shus Rabbim. Rabbi Asi will learn that our Mishnah is not talking about it in a simta. In a simta, Avadi would be kind of, like he quoted Rabbi Yochanan as saying. But the story of our Mishnah occurred in the Rishus Rabbim. Frank the Gemara, if you want to say that the story of our Mishnah occurred in the Rishus Rabbim, now the whole Mishnah is not going to make sense because Yachi Ema Ratio. Let's go back to the ratio. Moshach v'loy modad. If you make Mashicha and you didn't measure yet, kana you'll be kani. How can you make a Mashicha in a Rishus Harabim? Mashicha Rishus Harabim mikani. V'abayi v'ravad Amri. We had them a couple of blot ago. Damri Tavayu. Mesira kana Rishus Harabim. Uvechata sheino shel shneim. Mashicha kana besimta. Uvechata she shel shneim. V'agba kana b'chomakay. So how could you say our Mishnah is speaking in the case of a Rishus Harabim, and that's why it doesn't work if you just put it on the floor? Then how does the Mashicha work? So Gemara about the Mishnah speak Rishus Rabbim. My moshach that it says in our Mishnah that works, my moshach nami de katani is Rishus Rabbim simta. When it says moshach, it means you pulled it out of the Rishus Rabbim into a simta. It started in the Rishus Rabbim, but you pulled it out of the Rishus Rabbim, and there's your kinyan. Correct Gemara. If that's the case, let's look at the sefer. We're talking about Rishus Rabbim. If we're talking about it, whether in the chatzar shel shutfim or in the chatzar of the moicher, it makes sense. But even in the Rishus Rabbim, what do you mean tzarches makayma? How could you rent place in a Rishus Rabbim? The Rishus Rabbim miman ogar. The Rishus Bailim he. If you happen to be in the Rishus Bailim, then im hayu b'keach tzarches makayma. Al kaponim zakmor Rav Shmuel Damar Tavayu. Now we're getting off into a new situation because we all seem to agree that if it was in the kelim of the lekeach, this whole discussion today that we had was if you're in a simta or a chatzar shel shutzvim, and you just throws the weed on the floor in front of the lekeach, whether it's kain or not. That was the discussion with Rabbi Asi, Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Zera. But what if I actually put it into the kelim of the lekeach, and we're currently in the property of the moicher? Can my kelim be kind for me, even though my kelim are in your property? So Rav Shmuel Damar Tavayu, kelim shel adam kain lo b'chamakim chutz Rishus Harabim. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Lakish Damar Tavayu. Afilu Rishus Harabim, they'll be kind of Rishus Harabim as well. Okay, we'll stop here because tomorrow's sugya is about that. Caleb Shalakech versus Moicher versus Harabim. Today we got through the sugya of in a simta. If the Moicher just gives it to you, you didn't make a mechira, will it work? But I never got to the answer. Why could it possibly work? How does this kinyan possibly work. So the Rashbam says the way it works is because when the moicher is giving it to the lakeach, what the moicher is doing is he's pulling himself away from it. He's pulling away his ownership from it by giving it away. That in and of itself will create the kinyan. I wanted to learn that Rashbam inside, but I could not find it now as I'm looking for it. But that's what it is. It's because the moicher is sort of recusing himself from it by giving it to him. Hopefully tomorrow I'll find it. I'll be able to show you that Rashbam inside. Okay, Scott, you should have an awesome, awesome day. I'm not sure how it works. It's still not clear how it works, but at least we have some idea what's happening. But no, I don't know how it works. Because usually the keich has to make a move. And here the moicher making the move is working. Maybe it's on I'll have to find it and we'll get to it. Okay, geweldig.